Skald Against the Black Priory is the retro RPG you didn't know you needed in your life. This modern reimagining of the classic RPG from High North Studios will take you back to a time when games were passion projects built by gamers for gamers rather than thinly veiled cash grabs of heartless corporations. Do you remember the thrill and the mystery of those old 80s CRPGs and ever wondered what a modern day version would look like? Well, here it is in all its glory. Skald Against the Black Priory perfectly captures the essence of classic PC gaming while also introducing all the modern quality of life features that make modern games less taxing on our patience. You can save at any time, all important notes are saved in your journal, important terms can be clicked on for tooltips, and so on. However, the game still does a good job of keeping little things about old games, like not having a big flashing red X on the map to tell you where to go, or even having a map at all. Now, at first, that may sound like a bad thing, but it's actually not, as the directions you're given in-game are very clear, and the world is relatively small, making finding things easy for the most part. The lack of a compass or map pointing you to everything also forces you to explore, and the game world may be small, but it's tightly packed with interesting places, people, enemies, and loot, so exploration is never boring and never unrewarded. The game's story, though, is really its main draw for me. It centers around your character's search for your childhood friend Embla, who has gone missing on the island of Idra. Idra itself is beset by horrors from the deep, one of which sinks your ship on the way to the island. Washed up and unarmed, you begin your search alone. The story progresses from there as you find more party members and tackle the mystery of the Lovecraftian horror that has overtaken the island around the same time that Embla arrived. The story arcs in the game are all well done and have a great deal of emotion and player motivation given through the various characters you will meet. Each NPC you talk to clearly has their own motivations and thoughts on what is happening on the island, making them all very interesting and very unique. Now, sticking with the retro theme, there is no voice acting. All the story and character conversations are done in text, but man is it a good read. It's like reading a good novel and then taking a break to explore and fight in the world of that novel before flipping to the next page. It's good old storytelling at its best before all the flashy cutscenes and voice acting took away our imagination. The story of the game really does keep me pushing forward, and it's been a while since I had a game's story take more of a focus for me than the gameplay. Speaking of gameplay, it's nothing to shirk at either. When you first start a new game, you're able to create your own character from scratch, very similar to the way you may create a character for a D&D campaign. You'll pick your class, background, and appearance before being dropped into the game world. Then later, when you come across new party members, you won't get to choose the same things, obviously, their class and background, but you will get to choose where every single skill point is placed, from level 1 up to your main character's current level, which is really nice and allows you to build each character to complement your party better. Leveling up is XP based, and then at each level you are given skill points, or ranks as the game calls them, to distribute among your character's different feats. These feats give you everything from stat boosts to access to magical spells to martial abilities. Each feat typically has multiple tiers, and in order to get the rewards for each tier, you have to place a certain number of ranks into that feat. For instance, some tiers require 3 ranks, meaning you won't have access to that tier's reward until at least 3 ranks are put into its feat. This leads to some strategic thought, as you may want to put 2 ranks into one feat to gain a new benefit, and then put the last rank into another feat that you need 4 ranks in to slowly build it up, rather than putting them all in that 4 rank feat and not getting any benefit from your new level. Each class's feat tree has multiple paths too, meaning you have to decide where each character's focus will be. For instance, the Thief class has both a melee and bow focus branch. While you could maybe max out both of these trees so you don't have to choose a fighting style, doing so means you may not be able to do much on the Thievery branch and thus miss out on several stealth and thievery boosts. You also may miss the backstab boosts on another branch, which are the best way to maximize your Thief's damage. So there is definitely build crafting to be had. Combat itself plays out much as you would expect with a turn-based grid movement system. Each character typically has 3 move points and 1 action point, though the action point can be used as move instead, but you'll forfeit your action. Some feats can increase these as well. For your actions, you can cast a spell, use a martial ability, do a basic attack with your weapon, use items, and so on. Active weapons can be swapped on the fly between a character's equipped melee weapon or bow, which is really nice and can be a big help if a character can't get into melee range. Spells have a cascade feature where if a spell aptitude check succeeds, the caster gets to take another action, which can lead to some great damage since you're essentially getting another turn. And yes, combat and skill use like lockpicking is based on dice roll checks, adding appropriate modifiers against whatever the opposing number is. Just like the RPGs of old, and really many of them still today, there is a tabletop RPG dice system behind all the attacks and skills. This particular one is a 2d6 system, which is really simple and easy to understand, which makes picking feats a lot easier since you can pretty quickly understand their impact on gameplay. There are of course also weaknesses and resistances, meaning some enemies may more easily be taken out with fire magic for instance than physical attacks. There are even summons that can be used, like these little fire slime guys that my Battle Magus main character can summon. These summons are really good against a lot of enemies since they are resistant to physical damage, and they are great for placing behind enemies to flank them. Flanking is done by placing your characters above and below, or left and right of an enemy. A flanked unit will be easier to hit based on the attacking unit's flanking bonus, but a flanked unit can also be backstabbed by the thief for a massive damage increase. So there is quite a bit of strategy that goes into the combat itself as well. Moving over to the world building now, this is done through the conversations you have with various party members and NPCs, but also through the world itself. As you adventure, you'll come across the mutilated bodies of townsfolk and sailors, only later to come across the pack of wild hounds or overgrown crabs that killed them. You'll come across diaries of the deceased that go from a normal day a week before you arrived to the rantings of a crazed individual only a day before you arrived. You'll look into a telescope only to see eyes in the void staring back at you. The whole world, from the music to the story to the environments, are built around this Lovecraftian apocalypse theme, and I love it. Skald gives us a rich and deep lore and world to explore. One memorable moment that stands out for me was when Matthias, the lighthouse keeper, sent me on a quest to retrieve what he called an evil blade from which the darkness was rising. He was sure the blade was somewhere in the caves below the lighthouse. He wanted me to bring it to him so it could be destroyed. So I went spelunking into the cave, which I had explored a bit already, but clearly there was more to find. After a bit of exploring and evil crustacean killing, I found an underwater passage. This passage was a bit of a maze, and traveling through it was done in classic retro style through text and remembering which way you came from so you could find your way back to the surface if you were about to run out of air. I really enjoy these segments being put into games when they aren't overdone, as they really help raise the tension. Emerging from the passage, I stumbled upon a grotesque altar of sorts where desiccated corpses from apparently several millennia ago lay. Clearly, they were sacrificed to some evil entity. But there on the altar lay the dark blade I was seeking. A greenish blade, clearly used in ancient and evil rites. I quickly grabbed the blade up, but as I did, strange grey ooze monsters took form around my party and we had to fight our way out. Thankfully, I had focused my main character on the fire magic branch of feats, and these creatures were weak to fire. So in a torrent of flame and steel, we dispatched the creatures, and then returned to Matthias in the lighthouse. Upon seeing the blade and sensing the evil on it, he asked us to take it away from him and destroy it. This blade, though, this dagger, was a light weapon that my Battle Magus could wield, and it was far better than anything else I could equip. I kept it, and the dark blade continues to claim more lives, as it always had. Was this the right decision? Will this cursed blade be the undoing of my character at some point later in the game? I have no idea, and that is awesome. Skald Against the Black Priory is such a love letter to the RPG classics of old. Even if you don't normally play CRPGs, remember that in a lot of ways they are the forebears of the modern tactical RPG. The game moves at a good, quick pace, and there are plenty of tactical battles and build crafting to satisfy your inner tactician. For me though, the story alone is enough to keep me moving forward in the game, as there is just so much mystery and wonder. If you are a retro RPG fan, I think you owe it to yourself to play this great nostalgia dive with modern quality of life improvements. If you love a good story, pick up the game and play it on the easiest difficulty. If you're a hardened tactician, play it on hard. Personally, I'm playing on an easier difficulty and just enjoying the playthrough. Now, I have given some pretty glowing praise, but the game isn't without a few issues. I've found that with the modern lighting and weather effects turned on, I get some pretty bad frame drops in areas with a lot of lighting or bigger battles. Now, my PC is pretty old at this point, rocking an old GTX 1080 and an early generation Ryzen 7 processor, so that is probably part of the issue. This is a pixel art game though, so I think there may be some pretty major optimization issues in the current build. Turning off those two features though has given me a much smoother experience with only some small sporadic frame drops in bigger battles. I've also noticed a few typos here and there in the text in the game, but nothing that ruins the experience. All in all, Skald Against the Black Priory is an excellent callback to the classic PC RPGs of the 80s and well worth the $15 price. In fact, this is one of the best value buys I've seen for a new full game on Steam. Skald is available on Steam and GOG. Now for more tactical turn-based goodness, I've got this video right here for you. Remember to like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff, and thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and keep on gaming.